everybody. Happy Saturday, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to Blind Woman Recommends. This is kind of a new series where I basically recommend things after you watch something or before, after you read or watch something, or if I know of anything before you read or watch something. So, this is the recommendation section for after you read The Folk of the Air. So here I will be recommending two, because this is the only two that I can think of that I would want to recommend to you guys, unless I can think of anything else. Two book series, both of which are still in progress, and one anime. So let's just get to the point. This will be a short video, but if you do want to watch my my previous reviews for The Folk of the Air, playlist link is in the description, and so yeah, have fun watching that. So if you have picked up The Folk of the Air after my reviews or even before my reviews, I really hope you enjoyed it, because that I really did. So, what if you're really in the mood for something similar and you want to go to the court intrigue and you want to go into the Fae world and you want to read something that takes place with Fae? What should you read next? So, this is where I come in. I come in to recommend these two things. So, both of my recommendations are from the same author, and that is Sarah J. Maas. Now, Sarah J. Maas has a bunch of different books, and with the exception of one of her books, which is Soul Stealer, which is basically a part of a series called DC Archons, and this is the book for Catwoman, and this is the one thing she wrote. So with the exception of that, Sarah J. Maas has all of Sarah J. Maas's books contain Fae in one way or another. And they contain different like creatures and everything, which is why I think that Sarah J. Maas is good for this stuff. However, I will not be recommending Throne of Glass for this, and there's a reason. Mainly because Throne of Glass doesn't fully take place in the Fae world, and because although we do later on in the series get like oh, this scared me. Okay, and because even if and though we get like exposed to Fae and other worlds per se in the Sarah J. Maas universe, the Fae come back later in the story, usually later in the series, Heir of Fire and beyond. But I want to recommend books that have Fae all the way from the very beginning and not things we have to discover later in the end. So because of that, from Sarah J. Maas, I would recommend that you read A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is still continuing. The latest book in that series was released in February 16th, which is A Court of Silver Flames. I'll review A Court of Thorns and Roses in this channel eventually, preferably when I reread it. So that's one of the ones I think I would recommend. A Court of Thorns and Roses begins as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. But of course, Sarah J. Maas is an awesome writer, and her stories still, take form, and like they take form the way that she would want them to. Like, her execution of story is amazing. I'm a really big Sarah J. Maas fan, if you have not noticed by how much I basically praise her in this video. So Sarah J. Maas is awesome as a writer. I love her as a writer. I think she's great. So it starts off as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it takes specific aspects of that, mainly the curse, the beast and the curse, and the fact that the a woman has to he has to be loved by someone else, and everything like that. But then it kind of transitions from a Beauty and the Beast retelling to a lot more as the series continues. I also want to say that although it is um it it does start out as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Even the Beauty and the Beast retelling, the first book, which is technically the Beauty and the Beast retelling, even though it does have that aspect in the first book, the story is definitely not, it doesn't focus too much on the Beauty and the Beast aspects. It kind of just has it, it's part of it, just happens to be part of it. So yeah, it's a really good series. With the exception of one book, I gave all the books 5 stars on my Goodreads. So yes, yay. So I do love it. I do think it's a great series. So I would read that if you want to read if you want to read about Fae and get really a lot of exposure to Fae. The difference I think in this one is that there is it like in the it's kind of very similar in the Cruel Prince, where there are two, the two kinds of species, of course, that it's like mortal and Fae, but there's also like very similar to the Folk of the Air, there are also different species in this world that Sarah J. Maas has built. In the Fae world, there are different types of species and different type of creatures, kind of like in the Folk of the Air, which I think is a great similarity. However, while the Folk of the Air was I think I consider it kind of a low fantasy, like a really good fantasy for beginners, A Court of Thorns and Roses is I do consider it maybe not as high fantasy as Throne of Glass, but high fantasy in a sense. And unlike the Folk of the Air, the Court of Thorns and Roses series is very much adult. I don't think I mentioned it, or I hope I did, but I can't remember if I mentioned it in any of my videos. But the Folk of the Air trilogy is YA. It is YA, which, for those of you who do not know, stands for young adult. It is for teens. It's targeted toward teens. This series, although the writing feels kind of, in the beginning, sort of young adult until it gets to like A Court of Silver Flames, it is very much adult. It is very much adult. There are sex scenes, especially in A Court of Silver Flames. There's like a lot of sex scenes. There are a lot of those. There's a lot of adult content and other themes that come up in a lot of adult novels that I would never recommend for my teen viewers to read, but I'm not you and I'm not your parents, so I'm just giving you a recommendation based on what I think. So A Court of Thorns and Roses is very much adult, and it is very much it's very much heavy in the violence, in a way that the Folk of the Air is not. It is also very heavy in the sex, in the way that the Folk of the Air trilogy implied. It implied sex and stuff like that. A Court of Thorns and Roses gives you very descriptive scenes. So if you're uncomfortable reading sex scenes, that's something you should know. And then the next book I would recommend from Sarah J. Maas is also an ongoing series. It's the Crescent City series. So far, only one book is out, and that is House of Earth and Blood, which follows our main character Bryce as she went after she kind of like loses all her friends in a murder spree. Well, not a murder. I'm not gonna call it a murder spree. That's wrong language. In a very horrible murder. there was like a lot of murder involved, and very bloody and everything. She loses her friends, but the person who, however, they could not solve it. But 2 years after her friends died, and by the way, in that thing, she even lost her best friend. And I just want to say hashtag Bryce and Danica forever. This book shows the real power of friendship, man. It was so sweet. Anyway, before I start gushing about one of my favorite fictional friendships in existence, um, the 2 years after they die, the same killer does does return and commits another murder, and she is asked to help this angel hunt Athalar, although I think I prefer his actual name, Orion, to solve the murder. So it is a very interesting murder mystery, but very similar to The Folk of the Air. It has its own world. There are fae, and there are a lot of different species as well of creatures. There's mortals, but unlike The Folk of the Air, the mortals and the fae and all these creatures kind of reside in the same world. So we have a lot of different species and a lot of different like classifications and a lot of political intrigue. It's really good with that. So I do see some similarities in this to the Folk of the Air trilogy. However, like A Court of Thorns and Roses, this is very much adult. There is a lot of violence. There's a lot of swearing, which you would not find in the Folk of the Air because, again, it's YA. So swearing and violence is kept to a minimum, usually. It is kept to a minimum, usually. It is heavy in adult content. There is also a drug use in this one, so I would not recommend that if you're a teen, for you to read it. It's also one more thing you should know as both a teen and an adult reader. It is really long. It's a really long book, and it's a slow burn. Definitely a slow burn. I finished it in 3 days when I read it, but that's because I was so much into the book that at this point we knew I was going to finish it. You know what I mean? I was going to finish it either way. But like, I was so into the book, I was already into it. Like, I was into the book, and I'm into Sarah J. Maas's writing. So I finished it in 3 days. But the fact is that this is very, very long. So yeah, expect a lot of adult content. There are maybe 2 sex scenes in that book. So there's not a lot of sex in House of Earth and Blood. So the only thing you have to be careful about when reading is the violence, the amount of swearing. You may not be into it, but there is also there is definitely talk of sex in many in different forms from what I remember reading. So these are just things to be aware of when you read. If you read House of Earth and Blood, but it is also a high fantasy. It is very, very detailed in the world building, so you might get that's also part of the reason that I think it's really long. It's very detailed in the world building and very, very, very high into it. And very high into the politics. So if you're not into reading this many details into the world building, and you're not into reading 800-page books, this may not be for you. So done with the reading section. If you do want to watch something similar, there's only one anime I can recommend, and it's mainly because of the way that it's just, I don't know, it just is. So, and that anime is The Rising of the Shield Hero. Okay, hear me out on this. There are no fae at all in this, but there is magic, and the magic itself is really interesting. And we have the mortal world, and we have the other world as well, basically. So um this is basically a an anime following four heroes. Mainly, we follow our main character Naofumi Uwatani. Is it Uwatani? I'm just gonna say Naofumi because I can't. I think I got the last name, but I can't remember his full last name. I'm just gonna say Naofumi. He basically was like reading in the library, and he just got summoned to this world out of nowhere. And this world kind of operates like a video game, so whatever you do, you kind of level up and everything. So basically, he is one of four heroes who is there to basically save the who is there to save the or help save the kingdom. It's basically an isekai. It's known as an isekai in anime, where you basically get transported to a different world. And we follow Naofumi as after he is basically accused of a crime he didn't commit, and by the princess, and he is now by himself, and he has to do a lot of sinister things in order to survive, because he also happens to be the weakest of all the heroes, because he is the shield hero, so his only weapon is a shield, while everybody else has a bow. I think there's one that has a spear, and the other one I forgot what he has. But basically, he is literally the weakest of the heroes, but so he has to do everything he can in order to survive. And I think it's really interesting. The dynamic in this is really interesting. Now, when watching The Rising of the Shield Hero, it does get really dark, and it gets really dark really quick. So, if you may, I don't know, there have been certain well, actually no, I don't have any controversy directly, but I think there are some people that may not like Naofumi as a hero, because he does some sinister things, and the things that he does aren't necessarily considered good. However, when you think about the setting he's in, it's understandable. And oh my god, my favorite episodes are 4 and 21. If you've watched The Rising of the Shield Hero, you know why. Those are some powerful episodes, man. Powerful. Those are good episodes. And I think it's really, really nice. These are really good episodes. So, yes, I highly enjoyed watching that. Currently, there's only one season out, but I do believe there is supposed to be a season 2, and it might come this year. I'm not sure when, but I really want it to. Oh, and it's just occurred to me, there is one more series I can recommend as well that also has some magic, but it is a cartoon show. It is another anime, mainly an Italian anime, and that is Winx Club. And I would watch the original. I would avoid the live action. The live action is a train wreck. But I honestly would want to watch season 2 just so I can see where the train wreck goes. But Winx Club follows Bloom, and as she eventually finds out she's a fairy and discovers this new world and the magical universe, and she learns about herself and her parents. Meanwhile, she also makes some friends. She also makes some friends, and they become the Winx Club, and it's an awesome girl power fantasy. I love it. So the reason I think this is very similar, I guess, in context to the Folk of the Air trilogy, Winx Club has basically the world of Winx Club kind of lives in coexistence as with, like, the magical universe lives in coexistence with the mortal world, just the same way that Elfheim, also known as the Fey world, lives in coexistence with the mortal world as well. So it has that in common. And there's not a lot of court intrigue, unfortunately, but sometimes politics does make a big thing there. So yeah, I would watch the original Winx Club for that. And in Rising of the Shield Hero, honestly, the one thing I can see in common with the Folk of the Air is the simple fact that it is dark, and both characters have to do some dark things to survive. And I can appreciate that and I can love it because it makes it for a really good story. So, those are all my recommendations for what you should read or watch, depending what you're in the mood for, after reading The Folk of the Air. Let me know what you think about these recommendations. Did you like this segment? Did you not like this segment? I don't know. Let me know what you think. I really want to know. I am introducing a rapid segments into my channel, I know, but they usually interconnect with each other and I'm happy with it. So yeah, so these are my recommendations. Let me know what you think. Like the video, consider following me on social media if you're interested. I try to be very active in them. I am very, very active on Twitter, especially posting links to the videos as well as my Goodreads challenge. Sometimes I share my progress on books. I do tend to share my progress on books once in a while on Twitter and on Instagram. So if you want to see that stuff and if you want to see kind of where I'm at, follow me there. And I'll see you in my next video. I'm not sure if I'm coming back tomorrow, but hopefully I am. I might come back tomorrow with a reaction, but I'm not sure. But if I do, I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Bye.
Voice, enter password secure edit.
Oh, no, hold on.
Quick time.
Okay, there we go.
Show captured device.
There, it likes me now. I'll see you in the next video.
Stop recording.